TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Did you like the culture?
Yeah, I did like the Japanese culture. I've been back for Wrestle Aid, which is now defunct. I killed the territory, I guess. But I went back there, and then I should have went back a couple more times for Wrestle Aid, but I just at the time I was with a girl, and she thought she had ovarian cancer, so I had to cancel a tour and look out. I stayed home with her and seen her through her checkups and all that stuff. And another time I was injured with a knee problem, so I didn't go back as much as I should have. But I did enjoy the culture. I like the food over there. I like the people. The women are pretty. I think I like Japan. It's and I think it was just fun. I enjoy. I'm open to all cultures. You know what I mean? I've enjoyed something about every culture I've ever seen throughout the planet. So and I've been to a few places. So.
Did you like the wrestling style in the ring, the stiffness?
Yeah, I like tight. I like it tight. I prefer tight. Wrestling has enough problems when people calling it fake and whatnot. I don't like the word fake because gravity isn't fake, and I've got loads of injuries, torn muscles and torn ligaments and severed tendons and stuff like that, and it's just I got a lot of bumps and bruises, and there's pieces of me all over the world for people just to have a go at it like that. And so I try to make sure that as I've progressed in my career, especially after the PN News thing, I really made an effort to make sure that you not to be able to see through my work.
Memories of Sting.
Memories of Sting. I remember there were times when we'd be doing TV and nobody else would get a pop, and Sting was the only one getting pop. The guy was over. You know what I mean? That was he drawing? Nobody was drawing in WCW at the time, but he was definitely over. Definitely over. If he was done in the right way, and later on they did do him in the right way when that NWO stuff.
Right.
And I mean, I didn't agree with the NWO because of that. The whole thing, you're blurring that line between heel and babyface, and that's just that was one of the steps that I think has changed the business to a point where it's like unrecognizable to what I first got into. So.
What was he like outside the ring? Was he approachable or?
Yeah, I mean, I talked to him. He was a nice enough guy. I remember talking to him a few times, talking to him having a workout or doing something like that. But he was not the kind of person not that I wouldn't, but I just never got the opportunity to hang around with the guy. So.
Now, it seemed like after the Steve Austin feud, you were never really moved up further on the card. Why was that?
Well, that was right at the time. That was all right after that. That was the whole thing where that happened in Sheffield and all that stuff. So.
Who were some of your favorite guys to work with back in WCW?
Well, that was fun with Austin. I mean, I was pretty much destined to work with Johnny D.B. Bad all the time, and I can't say that was my favorite thing to do because he was green, but they seemed to like him and stuff like that. When I did get a chance to work with me, I did some matches with Mr. Hughes, and he was athletic as hell, and that was. I thought a lot of that. I always like working with big athletic guys. A few times I worked with Vader. That was good. Working Dick Murdoch was a pleasure when I got an opportunity to do that. I wish I'd have been there longer and got an opportunity. Work with Terry Taylor. I worked with Arn Anderson. I got to work with some really good workers, and so it was definitely. I mean, but I really couldn't say that just one really stuck out to me, you know what I mean? Because it was just because of my situation of having to always work with Johnny B. Bad all the time. I was kind of just stuck in a rut, you know what I mean? So.
Was he with Lady Blossom at that point in time?
Not at that time. He just started seeing her, I think, at one point, just toward the end of when I was kind of finishing up there. So.
Memories of Arn Anderson?
Arn Anderson, I enjoyed watching him work with Tully Blanchard, part of that Four Horsemen stuff. Loads of respect, regardless of what he thinks of me. He was one of those things in that company that really stuck out because him and Tully, or when they were doing the Four Horsemen thing, Arn was, he could talk on the mic, he could work. His only thing was he was just a deadpan, he had no facials.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, if that's the only thing I can pick apart about his wrestling ability, then God, he's, that's not much, is it?
What about Mick Foley?
Mick Foley, no personal problems with him, but and I think he's a nice guy, a nice fella, but that whole Mick Foley, getting the chainsaw out and trying to cut somebody's head off, and it's that kind of thing is kind of marked the beginning of the end for psychology in the business. You know what I mean? When you can do some of the stuff he did and then get up from it and and do something else. I mean, you got to admit he did sell when he was doing the stuff and he was really hurting,
right.
But and it got him a job and it made him millions, which is more power to him. But it just changed for me. It's changed the face of the business.
Did any of the boys ever take him on the side and say, "Hey, you're doing too much, less is more," or anything like that?
I never saw anybody do anything, but less is more for us. But you know what? He was doing what he was doing, and who am I to judge? He's made millions, So I mean, all I can do is say, I wish he would have done less. I wish he would have worked more instead of, worked people more instead of just going out and doing all that crazy stuff. But whatever.
Now you teamed with Matt Bourne too. What was Matt like inside and outside of the ring?
I traveled a lot with Matt, and I knew Matt since Portland. And Matt was I enjoyed Matt's company when he was rough. He was rough on the edges. He had like
we just did
some guys. Sorry.
We just did an interview with Matt about a month ago, and he told us about his drug problems and stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He had a lot of problems like that. But I remember times when he'd come back to the hotel room and we'd be sharing the hotel room, and he'd be so messed up that he'd just roll out of his bed and he'd piss on the floor. You know what I mean? Instead of going to the bathroom because he was just messed up like that. And and what do? You know what I mean? If he straightened up and he's gotten himself in good order, I'm happy for him because I think he's I mean, Matt in his day, I think that his drug problem was one thing that held him back because I thought he was as talented as anybody else in the business. So
definitely. Greg Valentine, memories from your matches with Greg?
Old school, very solid worker. You can respect that, and it's just a pleasure to work with somebody who you admired. It's that old adage, you know what I mean? I remember as a greenhorn, I'd go up to somebody like Greg, or I'd go up to Ray the Crippler, and I'd say, "Hey, it's a pleasure to meet you, sir. I remember watching with you when I was a kid." And that's something you just don't say to these guys, but you know what I mean? You just really, there is a respect because there's, that's just a generation that's gone, but. Again, Greg Valentine's a guy who could still get in the ring and still have a match. You know what I mean? So, and his work is believable, and you can respect that.
At one point in time in WCW, did you feel like you were done with the company? Was it after the incident, or?
Yeah, I pretty much knew at that point, and I still had 6 months at my thing. So it was January that '91 or whatever. I'd just been in the magazine and stuff like that, but I kind of knew, because everybody was treating me different. So obviously people, believed it, but I remember running into some of those guys like Kevin Nash and Scott Hall later on, and I remember Kevin Nash saying to me, he goes, about all that stuff, man, sorry, because, he apologized to me because, he'd figured it out. It wasn't me, and, because, I knew Scott, and Scott knew I didn't do it. And
was it another one of the boys, or?
Yeah, as far as I heard, Brad Armstrong had told me a couple years later that they caught somebody with their hands in the till. It was one of the referees or something. They'd caught him with the hands in the bag, and he got fired at that point. But wow. I still got, I still carry the burden. You know what I mean? I still get hung up with that crap. So.
Right. Now, after that, did you try to get into WWE at all, or?
Yeah, I actually, there was a couple times when I missed the boat on the WWE. I remember my daughter was conceived, and I went to the first King of the Ring, and that was like about the time Men in a Mission had started. And I remember Sergeant Slaughter coming up to me when I was there, and he goes, "Where have you been? We've been trying to get a hold of you for 3 months." You know what I mean? So there was like something there, and I talked to Pat, and they said, "Oh man, just stick around. We'll find something for you."
Watch thousands of exclusive shoot interviews right now on TitleMatchNetwork.com.